Professor Horror. Scary Stories.
Although this happened back in December 2019, I still think about it on a daily basis because it was unlike anything I had ever experienced before. I hope it offers some sort of enlightenment on what to do / not to do if you find yourself in a similar situation. So, I had ventured out to do a bit of late night shopping. I'm a 31-year-old stay-at-home mother of 2 young children, so once my husband gets home from work, I like to take some time to myself and go shopping, take a drive, or run errands, kid-free. It was around 8:30 p.m. when I arrived at the Target I frequent. I'm by no means a paranoid or anxious individual, but I have attended several seminars in college on human trafficking and have done plenty of research on my own learning to identify red flags and what precautions to take when out in public alone, especially at night. I carry several self-defense items on my person at all times: pocket knife, alarm, and universal handcuff key just in case. I parked directly in front of the store next to a cart caddy and took a mental note of the vehicles parked nearby again, just as precaution. I was taught at an early age to always be observant of your surroundings, and being a control freak just naturally makes you that way. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary that night, and the parking lot was actually quite empty, most likely because it was a weekday. As I entered the store, I began browsing like usual, following the natural flow of the store departments, following the main aisle around. I had been browsing for only 10 to 15 minutes when I noticed a young gentleman, maybe in his mid-20s. He was tall, skinny, dressed in a dirty gray 2-piece sweatsuit and brown work boots. He looked over at me. I smiled and said hello, but his facial expression was blank. He looked like he may have been high on something by the look in his eyes, but he didn't seem to care for my gesture, and he quickly moved on. At first glance, there was nothing in particular that alarmed me about him, except I took notice at the fact that he was wandering down the main aisle with no cart or basket, hands in his pockets, and didn't seem to be with anyone. I continued shopping with no second thoughts, and made my way to the next department. Several minutes had passed, and that's when I noticed a second young gentleman wearing the same gray sweatsuit and a similar pair of work boots. Again, no cart, no basket. He too glanced at me, then quickly darted his eyes away when he realized I was looking directly at him. I became a bit more alerted, but still remained composed and continued on browsing. Another 15 minutes or so passed, and that's when a third older man caught my attention, and you guessed it, same gray sweatsuit and work boots with no cart, no basket, just his hands in his pockets. I assumed they were in some sort of work uniform, maybe construction workers, but why weren't they walking around together? And why didn't they have any items to purchase? At this point, it was difficult to focus on browsing. I had a bad feeling about these 3 men, and it became clear that something was a bit off. Over the next 20 minutes or so, I felt as if I was being monitored by the 3 of them, as if they were all communicating my whereabouts as I continued to make my way through the store, because each department I entered, it didn't take long for me to notice one of the 3 men pass by whatever side aisle I happened to be in, making their presence known to me. I stayed completely vigilant, while trying not to panic or allow my suspicions to overwhelm me. Something about their presence felt very heavy and dark, so I decided to test their intentions to prove I wasn't overthinking the situation, and my bad gut feeling was valid. I began picking random aisles and traveling back and forth between departments in a very unorganized and random fashion, to see if the men would continue to pass by me as frequently as they had been. With every aisle I popped into, it was just a few minutes later one of them would make an appearance, staring me down as they passed by. It felt as if I was being surrounded like a wild animal, hunted even. They were no longer trying to be conspicuous, which was the scariest part of it all, and everything instinctual was screaming at me to get out of there. I gripped my cart so tightly and figured if they got too close, I could use the cart to push them away or at least create distance between us. By this point, I had been shopping for about an hour altogether, maybe a bit over, and was ready to purchase my items. But honestly, I felt too uncomfortable to continue browsing, even if I wanted to. The men had been following me all that time, and I was becoming more annoyed, if anything. The store was pretty empty around this time, one of the main reasons I like shopping at night, but that made this particular situation even more unsettling. 2 preteen girls were wandering around by themselves, which quickly caught my attention, because the men had bypassed them, making similar advances, but the girls were seemingly oblivious. So I quietly got their attention and asked them to go find their parents and stay with them. Trying not to freak them out, the mother in me was in full-on protection mode. I couldn't imagine having my young children with me on this night. Thank God they were home safe and sound. As I made my way to the checkout, I noticed one of the men coming up from behind me, walking at a quicker pace this time. So I immediately stopped and turned to lock eyes with him as he approached. I will never forget the darkness in his eyes. An eerie smirk formed on his face as he nudged my shoulder, continuing to stare me down, walking backwards to hold his sinister gaze as he exited out of the store. I had lost sight of the other 2 men, and I hated the uncertainty of it all. He made his message clear in that very moment. My stomach dropped and my entire body began to shake. It was a feeling I hadn't felt since I was a kid getting lost in the supermarket, a feeling of desperation. I quickly walked to the checkout, discreetly asked the cashier if I could speak to the manager, and told them what had transpired over the last hour, politely asking for a male employee to walk me to my car and for them to alert their security team member. When I told the manager what had happened, her face sunk as if she had already known about these men, and once I described them, she confirmed she knew who I was talking about. She expressed that several of the female employees had found the men unsettling in the past, and reassured me that someone would escort me to my car. She made a report about the incident and said that she would alert the authorities. I was still shaking, but felt relieved that she believed me and showed concern for the other young female patrons in the store. She took my information, then a young male employee walked me out to my car. What I saw as I exited the store made me sick to my stomach, solidifying all of my suspicions. A white windowless van was parked in the lot directly behind my car, about 3 parking space distance between us. One of the men seated in the driver's seat and the other 2 leaning against the side of the van, facing my car, attempting to hide out of view. I mean, how cliche and obvious can you be? Your license plate might as well read "Lady Snatchers" at that point. Whatever their intent, it didn't seem pure. I pointed them out to the male employee and said, "There they are," which then prompted the men to scurry into the van and speed out of the parking lot without hesitation. I truly don't know what would have happened if I walked out to my car alone, and I'm so freaking grateful I made it home safe and sound and lived to tell my story. Over the following week, I had heard there were several abduction attempts in the shopping center parallel to that target, and I'm almost certain it was the same individuals. To the 3 matching sweatsuit creeps, let's not ever meet again.